السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. وقد يعرف الوضع بإقرار واضعه، قال ابن دقيق العيد، لكن لا يقطع بذلك لاحتمال أن يكون كذب في ذلك الإقرار. انتهى. وفهم منه بعضهم أنه لا يعمل بذلك الإقرار أصلا، وليس ذلك مراده، وإنما نفى القطع بذلك، ولا يلزم من نفي القطع نفي الحكم، لأن الحكم يقع بالظن الغالب، وهو هنا كذلك. ولولا ذلك لما ساغ قتل المقر بالقتل ولا رجم المعترف بالزنا، لاحتمال أن يكونا كاذبين فيما اعترفا به. ومن القرائن التي يدرك بها الوضع ما يؤخذ من حال الراوي، كما وقع للمأمون بن أحمد أنه ذكر بحضرته الخلاف في كون الحسن سمع من أبي هريرة أو لا، فساق في الحال إسنادا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال سمع الحسن من أبي هريرة. وكما وقع لغياث بن إبراهيم حيث دخل على المهدي فوجده يلعب بالحمام، فساق في الحال إسنادا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا سبق إلا في نسل أو خف أو حافر أو جناح، فزاد في الحديث أو جناح، فعرف المهدي أنه كذب لأجله فأمر بذبح الحمام. So in the previous paragraph, Ibn Hajar rahmallah clarified which type of scholars would notice that a narration is forged. He mentioned that it's those scholars whose اطلاعه تاما وذهنه ثاقبا وفهمه قويا. He now explains to us the different ways which these scholars would use to understand. So it's not for us, it's only because remember he's writing his book for beginners, it's not for a beginner, it's for those who fulfill these qualities. They have this ittila'u tam and zahn taqib, etc. So the different ways which they would use to understand if a narration is fabricated. He mentions the first way is وَقَدْ يُعْرَفُ الْوَضْعُ بِإِقْرَارِ وَاضِعِهِ. So sometimes they would come to know that a narration is a fabrication because the one who fabricated admitted it. This here has the least amount of effort from the muhaddithun. They don't have to do anything. And yet it is the strongest way. That when a person came forward and admitted, then this here was the strongest, it's concrete evidence. So an example of this here, the famous example which Imam Bukhari rahmallah narrated in Tarikh al-Awsat, and Ibn Adi rahmallah also narrated it with his Sanad in Kamil in volume 5 on page 24, that Umar bin Subh said, أَنَا وَضَعَتُ خُطْبَةَ النَّبِيِّ صلى الله عليه وسلم. He confessed that he was the one who fabricated the khutbah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now the question arises that why would a person confess? Because obviously he lied for a reason. So why must he now expose himself? And especially since lying is such a major sin. And if it was found that a person lied in Ḥadīth, it's like so much disgrace. So why would he disgrace himself? Why would he come forward and confess? So to respond to this here, when we study the confessions of all those who fabricated and who mentioned that they fabricated, we find that they would confess because of one of three reasons. The first is that maybe they were asked. At times scholars would confront them and they would ask them, and in response they would have no option but to expose themselves. So an example of this here is Ibn Adi rahmallah. He mentions under the profile of Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Ghalib. So he says that and he was famously known as Ghulam al-Khalil. So Ibn Adi says that I heard Abu Abdullah an-Nahawandi, he says that he was in a majlis of Abu Aruba, and he told Ghulam al-Khalil that هذه الأحاديث الرقائق التي تحدث بها, that you are narrating all of these narrations, from where did you get all these kind of narrations? So he confessed and he said, وَضَعْنَاهَا لِنُرَقِّقَ بِهَا قُلُوبَ الْعَامَّةِ, that we have fabricated all of these narrations so that we could make the hearts nuraqiq, riqqatul qalb, we could use it to make the hearts of the masses raqiq. So this is how he confessed. So this is the first point. Then the second reason why they would expose themselves is maybe they were trying to prove a point, or they were trying to show how apparently successful they were. So like when Abdul Karim bin Abi Auja was taken to be crucified, then he said, like, now obviously being crucified is like he's being humiliated and he's being defeated. But now in order to prove that he actually was successful, so he said, وَضَعْتُ فِيكُمْ 4,000 حَدِيثًا أُحَرِّمُ فِيهَا الْحَلَالَ وَأُحَلِّلُ الْحَرَامَ, that I fabricated 4,000 narrations. And obviously the scholars were able to detect it. Therefore, in today's times, you won't find one narration that goes via Abdul Karim bin Abi Auja. And then the third reason is that when they were regretting it and they wanted to make tawbah and they wanted to repent, so then they would confess that all what I used to do all this time, I used to just fabricate against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now on this point here of iqrar wadi'i here, Ibn Hajar rahmallah brings another statement to reaffirm what he mentioned earlier. That in a previous paragraph he said there that وَالْحُكْمُ عَلَيْهِ بِالْوَضْعِ إِنَّمَا هُوَ بِطَرِيقِ الظَّنِّ الْغَالِبِ لَا بِالْقَطْعِ. So now a person might think that if you have a person who came forward and he confessed, then that is really concrete evidence. So therefore you should get absolute conviction. Therefore, Ibn Hajar rahmallah approves that even if a person confesses, then too we cannot be convinced. And to prove this here, he quotes from Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. So he says, قال ابن دقيق العيد رحمه الله لكن لا يقطع بذلك لاحتمال أن يكون كذب في ذلك الإقرار. That even then we cannot have firm conviction, because it is very possible that this person is lying in the confession of his. So Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, as you know, he was no small scholar. Sheikh Awama, he says that the status of Ibn Daqiq al-Eid in the Shafi'i madhab is like Ibn al-Hummam in the Hanafi madhab. And it's coincidental that in Egypt, when you go, they are both buried opposite each other. I told you before that when we were in Egypt, we used to make research and go to all these different graves. So they are both buried like opposite each other. So the statement of Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, if we have to go back to the source in Al-Iqtirah, it is as follows, that وَقَدْ ذُكِرَ فِيهِ إِقْرَارُ الرَّاوِي بِالْوَضْعِ. It's mentioned that one of the ways of detecting that the narration is a fabrication is that the person comes forward and he confesses. وَهَذَا كَافٍ فِي رَدِّهِ. He says that this here is kafin, it's sufficient. In fact, you're saying subhanallah, so to tell you how it happened is, they say that Ibn al-Hummam rahmallah, he came to the qabr, it's written there, whether it's true or not, I didn't research it, that he came to the qabr of Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, and he made dua. He started to read Surah Hud, and he reached the ayah, فَمِنْهُمْ شَقِيٌّ وَسَعِيدٌ, and then he began to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that to save him from being shaqi and to make him from sa'id, and in that way he made dua to be buried there, and that's how he was buried there. So that's what's written at the qabr. So هذا كافٍ في رده. So he's saying that this here is sufficient to refuse and to reject the narration. لكن ليس بقاطع في كونه موضوعا لجواز يكذب في هذا الإقرار بعينه. So look at the words here. لكن ليس بقاطع في كونه موضوعا. We cannot be convinced that indeed the narration is a fabrication. Why? لجواز يكذب في هذا الإقرار. Because it's possible that he is lying in this confession of his, in this very confession of his. So this is, you can see the apparent meaning. If you have to now look at the statement on your own, what you would understand. You would understand that he's saying that هذا كافٍ في رده, it's sufficient to reject. لكن ليس بقاطع في كونه موضوعا, but we cannot be convinced that it is موضوع. So that's how you can dissect the statement, look at it yourself, ponder over it, and that's the meaning which you will get. But what Ibn Hajar rahmallah is saying, وَفَهِمَ مِنْهُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَنَّهُ لَا يُعْمَلُ بِذَلِكَ الْإِقْرَارِ أَصْلًا, that we will now reject his testimony, we will not accept his confession at all. So there were many scholars who misunderstood the statement of Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. Amongst others, his very own student, Imam Zahabi rahmallah, he assumed that Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is denying the fact that we can accept the confession of a person. And then there were a few scholars after that also. The teacher of Ibn Hajar, rahmallah, Alama Iraqi, remember we discussed in Muqaddamah ibn Salam. Likewise, Ibn Mulaqin, Iyamullah al-Qari, rahmallah, taken from Alama Sakhawi. He mentions the name of Alama Jazari, rahmallah. So you can see there were few scholars who took this meaning. They understood that statement. So when you look again at the statement, they understood that that statement means that if a person comes forward and confesses, we cannot accept that confession. Why? Because he could be lying. He can say that I fabricated 4,000 ahadith. How you know that he is speaking the truth and he really did fabricate? What if he's just lying? He didn't fabricate 4,000 ahadith. He came and he said, I fabricated this narration which I just narrated to you. Maybe he's lying in that iqrar of his, in that confession of his. So Alama al-Qani, rahmallah, he takes the name of Alama Dhahabi, the student of Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, and he says, قضيتهم أنه فهم أنه ألغى الإقرار. That what he's understanding, Imam Dhahabi rahmallah, he's understanding that Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is actually negating, he's rejecting that you can accept a confession. وَأَبْقَى الْحَدِيث عَلَى الْعَمَلِ بِهِ وَالْحُجِّيَّةِ. And he's saying that no, the narrations which this person narrated will still remain and we can still practice upon it and it will still be regarded as sahih or acceptable, that we can use it as a hujjah. وَفِيهِ نَظْرٌ. والظاهر أنه إنما فهم أن الحديث لا يؤخذ به من جهة هذا الراوي بل من جهة أخرى. So this is the meaning which some scholars have taken, but Ibn Hajar rahmallah said وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ مُرَادُهُ وَإِنَّمَا نَفَى الْقَطْعَ بِذَلِكَ. That Ibn Daqiq al-Eid did not intend to say that you cannot accept confession at all. That if a person comes forward and confesses and admits and claims that he fabricated, then you cannot accept it at all. That's not what Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is not rejecting the confession of a narrator. So he's not saying that if someone confesses that he fabricated, then we cannot accept his claim. But what does he mean? So he is merely claiming that even if a person confessed, then too we should be vigilant. And Alama al-Qani rahmallah then explains it saying, جعل كلام ابن دقيق العيد بيانا للمراد ولم يجعله استشكالا. That Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is not objecting here, but rather he's explaining it that we cannot be fully convinced. So probably a person could have narrated sahih narrations, but because he does not want others to benefit from those narrations, he can now come forward and he can lie. And you can say, you know, all the narrations which I narrated to you, they're all fabrication. So what he's doing, in a 10 seconds, he's throwing water over all the hundreds of narrations which he has narrated. So in that way, no one will then practice on all those authentic narrations. And a murtad would do this here, that he wouldn't want people to, because now he's leaving Islam, he has this rancor, he has this enmity. So now he doesn't want people to practice, but so many years he supported and he actually narrated a hadith. So he doesn't want people now to benefit from these hadiths. So he can come forward and he can lie. So what Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is saying, he's saying that he does not deny that we can practice on his statements, but he just advises that we should not assume or think that because he confessed, it's now concrete, it's absolute, it's cast in stone. We should still look for mutaba'at, we should look for shawahid, and we should see maybe those narrations are authentic. That's all what Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is saying. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah says, وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ نَفْيِ الْقَطْعِ نَفْيِ الْحُكْمِ. That we cannot say that if you're not getting this firm conviction, then it means that the narration is also not fabricated. So وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ نَفْيِ الْقَطْعِ, it does not mean, it's not necessitated that if we're not getting conviction, نَفْيُ الْحُكْمِ, then we cannot pass the ruling of this narration being a fabrication. لأن الحكم يقع بالظن الغالب وهو هنا كذلك. So we cannot we can still regard this narration to be a fabrication, and it just means that we have the overwhelming thought, and that's like what he explained in the beginning of the previous paragraph. So now Ibn Hajar rahmallah strengthens his point to show that how laws are even executed just based on Dhannul Ghalib. And he says, وَلَوْلَا ذَلِكَ لَمَا سَاغَ قَتْلُ الْمُقْتَرُ بِالْقَتْلِ. He's saying that if a person comes forward to a judge and he confesses that he killed another person, says قَتْلُ الْعَمَدِ, and he killed him for no apparent reason. So in an Islamic country, the law will be that this person here now should be killed as well. So the judge can pass the ruling just based on that confession. But even on that confession, it could be that he is lying. maybe he could just come, let's say a person wants to commit suicide. So now he doesn't want to commit suicide that in a way that people will think that he killed himself. So he can just come and lie and tell the qadi, tell the judge that, you know what, I killed, there was a murder a few days ago. I'm actually the one who killed. And based on his confession, the judge will actually pass a ruling. So it's Zannul Ghalib, that he could be lying as well. But on that confession, which is Zannul Ghalib, a life is being taken. And the person could be lying. So the killer is going to be a fasiq either way. If he killed another person for no apparent reason, then he's definitely a fasiq. Or if he is lying, let's say he came forward now and he lied, then also he's a fasiq. So in either way, he's a fasiq, but yet the judge is accepting his confession, and based on the confession of a confirmed fasiq, the judge is passing the law. So the same also applies here, وَلَا رَجْمُ الْمُعْتَرِفِ بِالزِّنَا, that if a person comes and he admits that he committed adultery, so he can be speaking a lie about it. Yet everyone agrees that we can accept his statement and we can pass the law accordingly. So again, here, whether he did commit adultery, if he did commit adultery, obviously, then he's a fasiq. And if he didn't commit adultery, then now he is lying. And lying is also a major sin. So definitely he's a fasiq in either way in which you look at it. So the same applies here. إن أحدا من المسلمين إذا أسند إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا ثم اعترف أنه كذب فلا شك أنه يغلب على الظن صدقه في الثاني وكذبه في الأول، إذ لا يجترئ مؤمن على نسبة مثل هذا القبيح الشنيع الذي اتفق العلماء على أنه كبيرة، بل قال بعضهم إنه كفر إلى نفسه، على أن الأصل في خبر المؤمن الصدق بمقتضى حسن الظن به، ولذا يقبل خبر واحد في الديانات، وإن كان الخبر من حيث هو يحتمل الصدق والكذب بالتجويز العقلي، ولذا لا يقطع به ولا يتم بمضمونه. So you can see that we will still accept his confession. Now here a person can come forward and object that Ibn Hajar is making qiyas of a person who lies in hadith. He's making qiyas on a person who confesses on killing another person and a person who confesses in zina. So he's saying a person can object and saying that this qiyas is not correct. It's qiyas ma'al fariq. Why? Because a person would only admit that he killed another person, or he would claim that he committed adultery if it is 100% true. And why? Because people generally enjoy life. People want to live long. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put even the challenge to the Jews about desiring death. So every person, it's like an inherent quality within him that he wants to live longer and longer and longer, and is fearful of death. So this person here, he will have to be convinced, and he'll have to be true. Then only he would come, because he knows what judgment is going to be passed. So when he comes and he gives the testimony of killing another person or of making zina, then he's definitely going to think about it a lot, and only if he's really willing to accept, if he's really willing to accept the punishment, then he's going to come forward and confess. But when a person comes forward and claims that he fabricated, he's not going to be killed. All that's happening is that others are not going to be practicing on this narration. So the qiyas is ma'al fariq, because in these examples, the person is being killed, whereas a fabricator is not being killed. So Allama al-Qani rahmallah responded to this, and he said, وَيُجَابِ بِأَنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ بَابِ إِثْبَاتِ الْحُكْمِ بِالْقِيَاسِ وَإِنَّمَا هُوَ مِنْ بَابِ التَّمْثِيلِ وَالتَّنْزِيرِ لِلْإِسْتِئْنَاسِ. That here, this is not qiyas. Ibn Hajar rahmallah is just showing you, he's giving you an example. That's all that he's doing. He's not making qiyas. That just like how a ruling is passed here, he's just giving an example and showing that, look, there are times when a person can be a fasiq as well, yet we will accept his confession. So ultimately it is proven that even if a person confesses, then too we cannot get yaqeen, we'll only get Zannul Ghalib. And even if he's repenting, now here maybe a person will assume that a person came forward and is repenting, he wants to change his life, he's regretting, or an-Nadmu tawbah, he's regretting all what he done. So maybe now we should be able to get yaqeen. But even in this case, it's still only Zannul Ghalib. And Mullah al-Qari rahmallah explains why you'll still only get Zannul Ghalib even if it's repenting. So he says, وَالْغَالِبُ أَنَّ الدَّاعِي إِلَيْهِ إِنَّمَا هُوَ التَّوْبَةِ وَحِينَئِذٍ يَبْعُدُ أَن يَكُونَ كَذِبًا. لكن لاحتمال جرأته على الله تعالى وقلة حيائه من الخلق أو قصد فساده في الرواية وعدم العمل بها لا يقطع بالوضع, saying that because he had that amount of guts to lie against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had absolutely no haya, and he could just come and fabricate like that, and because of like the sun basically is such a despicable thing to do. So therefore, we still can, even if he's making tawbah, we cannot be convinced. Yes, إلا إذا دل دليل على صدقه على ما ذكره في المنهل فإنه إذا تواردت الأدلة على شيء يقطع به. But it's because of the dalil. It's not because of him confessing because of tawbah. Now Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentions another way in which to recognize that a narration is a fabrication. So he says, وَمِنَ الْقَرَائِنِ الَّتِي يُدْرَكُ بِهَا الْوَضْعُ مَا يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ حَالِ الرَّاوِي. If you look at the circumstances and the condition of the rawi, that when did he mention that? What was happening when he came forth? And he mentioned that. So he gives an example and he says, كَمَا وَقَعَ لِمَأْمُونِ ibn Ahmad. So he says, like what happened for Ma'mun bin Ahmad al-Harawi al-Sulami. So with regards to him, Ibn Hibban rahmallah mentions in Al-Majruhin, كان دجالا من الدجاجلة ظاهر أحواله مذهب الكرامية وباطنها ما لا يوقف على حقيقته. You are such a weird person, you don't even know what his manhaj was, what his madhab was, and he was a dajjal min al-dajjajila. So you can see from this example here that أنه ذكر بحضرته الخلاف في كون الحسن سمع من أبي هريرة أو لا. The people were discussing in his company whether Hassan Basri heard from Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu or not. فساق في الحال إسنادا إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال. He's saying that immediately there and there, this Ma'mun, he made up a sanad and he said, because maybe he didn't understand what exactly they were talking about, maybe he confused Hassan, maybe he thought it was a grandson of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or for whatever reason. But there and there, so you know when a person becomes such a habitual liar, then at times they might say things which might be so glaring, it might be so apparent that it's a lie, yet because of their habit. So yeah, at times it's such a glaring and so emphatic, so clear, so manifest that this here is a lie. Yet he fabricated there and he said that, attributed to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Sami' al-Hasan min Abi Hurairah." That Hassan heard from Abu Hurairah. Now you know they say likulli jawadin kabwa, that Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says every fast riding a horse sometimes can fall. So you see Alama al-Qani rahimahullah is such a great scholar and obviously so much benefit from his kitab. I told you that it's my personal preference, Qada al-Watr, but yet he did not understand this example here and he thought he did not understand this whole example. You can go read it up there and check. So nevertheless, but here you can see that in this narration, he's like, it's so apparent that he lied, that he's saying that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Sami' al-Hasan min Abi Hurairah. Obviously, Hassan Basri was not even born in the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So anyone who looks at this narration would immediately know that this here is a fabrication. That's one example which he gave. So the circumstances of the narrator, you can see that it was a discussion which was taking place, and he just wanted to show that he has knowledge on the thing, and therefore he fabricated. But كما وقع لغياث ibn Ibrahim. So like the same with Ghiyath bin Ibrahim, Imam Abu Dawud, you can see Sheikh Nuruddin Itr also writes here in the footnotes, Imam Abu Dawud rahmallah called him a kazab, so he was a liar. That حيث دخل على المهدي, so he came to Mahdi. You know Mahdi is the father of Harun al-Rashid. He lived between 125 and 169 Hijri. So he came to him and he found him that he was playing with a pigeon. فوجده يلعب بالحمام. He found him playing with a pigeon. There and there now he wanted to impress, because obviously the leader, and you can see Mullah al-Qarir writes لِتَمْعِ الْمَالِ, because now he wanted maybe some monetary gift or some financial benefit. So there and there he came and he fabricated and he made up a sanad. He wanted to impress the king, and he said that it comes in a hadith, وَدَتْ سَنَدْ لَا سَبَقَ. So لَا سَبَقَ means the word سَبَقَ الْمَالِ الَّذِي تَقَعُ الْمُسَابَقَ عَلَيْهِ. It's like the prize. That means when there's a competition and then you get a prize. So there is no prize for a competition. Mullah al-Qari says, وَالْمَعْنَى لَا يَحِلُّ أَخْذُ الْمَالِ بِالْمُسَابَقَةِ إِلَّا فِي هَذِهِ الثَّلَاثَةِ. Except if there are three things. So illa fi naslin. So naslin refers to an arrow. So it means except in archery. In archery, if there's a competition in archery, then you can put a monetary gift there. Or khufin, or maybe when there is a camel race. So if there's a race between camels, then there you can have a prize. Or hafirin, or if there's a horse race, then they can also be as a gift or a present for the winner. So now, because he wanted to impress the king, so what he said, "Oh janahin," or if you are playing pigeons. So you can see now, obviously, it's very apparent here. And so then exact narration, it does come with the words until fi naslin, that it comes in Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud. Likewise, Imam Ahmad rahmallah is narrated, la sabaqa illa fi khufin aw hafirin aw naslin. So till there it's correct. But here he wanted to impress the king. فعرف المهدي أنه كذب لأجله. So Mahdi immediately realized that this person lied just for his sake. فأمر بذبح الحمام. So therefore he commanded that the pigeon be slaughtered. So this entire incident, Al-Imam Khatib rahmallah is narrated it in Tarikh Baghdad, which is Sanad, and the Sanad goes via Ahmad bin Zuhair, who narrated it from his father, that قدم على المهدي, that 10 muhaddithun came, فيهم الفرج بن فضالة وغياث بن إبراهيم وغيرهم. وكان المهدي يحب الحمام ويشتهيها، فأدخل عليه غياث بن إبراهيم فقيل له حدث أمير المؤمنين. The people came and they were trying to convince him and told him that, why don't you just make up the hadith. فحدثه بحديث أبي هريرة لا سبق إلا في حافل ونصل وزاد فيه أو جناح فأمر له المهدي ب10,000. So this is the reason why I'm quoting it from there. That initially Mahdi actually got convinced and he became so happy. So that's what Mullah al-Qari is saying. وَالْأَظْهَرْ مَا رُوِيَ أَنَّ الْمَهْدِي اسْتَحْصَنَهُ أَوَّلًا وَأَعْطَاهُ 10,000 dirham. He gave him 40,000 dirhams. But then فَلَمَّا قَامَ قَالَ أَشْهَدُ أَنَّ قَفَاكَ ذَابٍ عَلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم وَإِنَّمَا اسْتَجْلَبْتَ ذَلِكَ أو وَإِنَّمَا اسْتَجْلَبْتُ ذَلِكَ أَنَا. So he says فَآمُرُ بِالْحَمَامِ فَذُبِحَتْ. So you can see here that he first actually gave him a gift, and thereafter he realized that this person just fabricated, and therefore he gave him, he ordered that the pigeon has to be slaughtered. وَمِنْهَا مَا يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ حَالِ الْمَرْوِي. So that was looking at the circumstances of the narrator. You can see in the one case that the person wanted to appear very knowledgeable. In the second example, the person wanted the gift from the king. Sometimes when you look at the text of the narration, يَكُونَ مُنَاقِضًا لِنَصِّ الْقُرْآنِ أو السُنَّةِ الْمُتَوَاتِرَةِ. For example, you find a hadith which contradicts an apparent verse of the Quran. So Mullah al-Qari rahmallah gives the example kat-tajsim. If you done aqidah, you'll know why this is important. Example, he says like kat-tajsim, like if you have to come with a hadith which supports sim, and one day if you get time inshallah, we'll discuss all the different fabrications with regards to tajsim and ulu and all of that. Such a long inshallah you can talk about it for over 5 hours, how books were fabricated, how different texts were put into different books and things, like, just to establish this one point. Nevertheless, so if something goes against an apparent verse of the Quran, but remember at the end, you can see at the end of this paragraph, Ibn Hajar says, حَيْثُ لَا يَقْبَلُ شَيْءٌ مِنْ ذَلِكَ التَّأْوِيلِ. Must be that you cannot interpret it, you cannot make jama'ah, you cannot combine it, you cannot see how they're in harmony with each other. It's clear-cut, very evident that it's going against apparent verse of the Quran. أو السنة المتواترة أو الإجماع القطعي. Mullah al-Qari rahmallah explains إجماع القطعي أي الإجماع الغير السكوتي. That means it must be ijma where people verbally mention their views. Shouldn't be, and it also should be al-manqul bi-tariq al-tawatur. So it shouldn't be ijma'us sukuti. So in short, it's a very clear law of Sharia, and then you have a narration which is contradicting it, or maybe it promotes evil. Then we can definitely know that this narration is baseless. Like for example, a narration which is calling one towards sin, towards immodesty, to corruption, to oppression, etc. Obviously, it cannot be from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or sarihul aql, or maybe it's even going against common sense. So this here, again, refers to aql of the imams, because us, we don't even understand basic things properly. So it's not our aql, it's the aql of imams. And if they were unable to comprehend something, then they can grade a narration as mawdu'. So it does not refer to our aql. So we can't say that, no, this narration here, it doesn't make sense to me. So therefore, I'm going to be rejecting it. It refers to the aql of the imams. So this is what Ibn Subki rahmallah, when he said كل خبر أوهم باطلا ولم يقبل التأويل فمكذوب. It means that if the imams, if the great scholars who knew hundreds of thousands of narrations, if they could not make ta'wil. Likewise, Ibn al-Jawzi rahmallah, you know the famous statement of his, إذا رأيت الحديث يبين المعقول أو يخالف المنقول أو يناقض الأصول فاعلم أنه موضوع. So then you should know it refers to mawdu'. Now quickly to go here on this paragraph, when you look at it, ما يؤخذ من حال المروي. So it's very clear that at times scholars would only look at the text of the narration. So they're saying it's a fabrication solely and only because of the text. So they're not looking at the chain at all. So even if there's no liar, apparently that chain, that sanad might seem to be authentic. But because they are noticing that it's contravening and a clear-cut ruling of Sharia, they are grading it as a mawdu' narration. But from a sanad point of view, it is authentic. So that is why Ibn Hajar rahmallah, when he made this exception here, حيث لا يقبل شيء من ذلك التأويل. Now every scholar has a different level of acumen, a different level of knowledge, different level of intelligence. So this then led to lots of differences with regards to mawdu' narrations. Because one scholar would have feel that, look, this narration is going against the verse of the Quran. Because according to his aql, he could not make a tadbiq, or he could not make ta'wil. But then another scholar would be able to come and who would explain that there's no contradiction at all. This is how you combine the two narrations. So it's not, and the sanad is authentic. Remember again, that you're not looking at the sanad, and you're looking at min hal al-marwi. So yeah, I'm just trying to explain to you how you get scholars differing on whether a narration is mawdu' or not. And this is why Ibrahim al-Lahim, he said, وَهِيَ قَضِيَّةٌ ضَخْمَةٌ جِدًّا فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ. And then after that, he explains that why there are so many objections on the verdicts of Ibn al-Jawzi, rahmallah, in al-mawdu'at, that he brought narrations and only focusing on the text. He graded it as mawdu'. So when you're done Muqaddamah Ibn Salah, actually you should read page 330. You'll see he also gives an example. The time is up, so I won't go through that. So these are a few ways which Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentioned here, and then there are other methods as well. We discussed most of it. We quoted from Tadrib al-Rawi when we are doing Muqaddamah Ibn Salah. Like as I told you, you can go through Al-Munar al-Mani, or even if you have to go through Tanzih al-Sharia, like sometimes looking at the words. But probably Ibn Hajar rahmallah felt that maybe you could put all of those also under these three, because these three categories are so broad. And some scholars actually did do that. They did put some of those, like when it's mentioning a great reward, then put it under min hal al-marwi, etc. But yeah, I wanted to conclude this here again. So we started it with a clarification, and again, because put to emphasize, when you emphasize it, so we're sandwiching it with this clarification, that these are only for masters and experts. Us who hardly know anything, we cannot go and open a book of hadith and look and say min hal al-rawi or min hal al-marwi. So Sheikh Ghuzair, he mentions غير ذلك من العلامات التي نصبها الأئمة. And thereafter he says وليس معنى ذلك أن هذه العلامات يسيرة معلومة لكل إنسان. It doesn't mean that anyone can just do this here. وإنما ذلك لجهابذة الحديث فقط. Only for the experts. وهم الذين لديهم الأدوات الصحيحة التي يميزون بها صحيح حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من غيره تمييزا دقيقا. So that brings us to the end of the 20 sessions. Inshallah, we'll continue after Ramadan. Please, we're getting all the notes ready, putting them on the website. So a reminder again, please try to go through the notes. It shouldn't be that now we're putting so much effort in this note, spending so much funds on these notes, getting these notes done. And then, it's only for those of you who are doing the kitab. So if you're not going through it, then it means it's like we're wasting our time and our funds as well by getting it. It takes up to 8 hours sometimes just to get the notes of one lesson done. That's why we have to hire someone, because they check up again, cross-check references and things like that. Now, that's just typing it out, obviously typing it very fast, and we are supposed to be checking it. So inshallah, you also make dua for us. And the one point thing about the notes is that always remember that we have the website. We don't know until when we'll have the website. So please, if you can, copy it. We did try to make it such that you can download it in Microsoft Word, but because that's going to become so difficult, that is why, so copy it and paste it and save it on Microsoft Word. So tomorrow, if the hosting expires or for whatever reason, if the site is no more there, at least you got all the notes. And so we make dua for us as well, especially in the month of Ramadan, at the time of tahajjud, at the time of iftar, dua al-ghaib li-ghaib, and spend as much time of Ramadan in the recitation of the Quran. And so our Ustad used to tell us that when you our Ustad used to tell us that when you read the Quran, the greatest gift you can give is that you'll still keep, you see, one is a gift you give, and then if you give like funds or you give a kitab, now you got the kitab in your hand and you're giving it and it goes away. But if you read the Quran and then you pass the sawab on, then you still keep your own sawab and you pass the sawab on to us as well. So us, because we are so consumed in this dunya and so much evil, our amal are so little, so please, when you do good actions, also pass the thawab on to us as well. Inshallah, we will continue again after Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us life. Until then, jazakumullah.